Well, I just want to say a big old welcome to you guys. We've got Roger and David from the Seattle Fire Department. How are you guys doing this morning?
Outstanding.
Good as well.
Really appreciate you coming all the way out to Shoreline. And I was so inspired by what you all did this weekend with the Big Red Bus. For somebody who doesn't know what the Big Red Bus is, how would you define it?
We call it the MAB. It's the medical ambulance bus. But everyone, it's funny, the clients that we picked up and the people that we were helping all started referring to it as the Big Red Bus. So maybe that's the new name. I don't know.
I think so.
So it was designed for mass casualty incidents, for transporting people in a bus, like multiple patients, right?
Right.
Fortunately, thank God, we've only dispatched it to a couple. There was a bad bus wreck on I-5. During the ice storm at the end of 2022, Health One, which I should describe as the Seattle Fire Department's low acuity program, we've always done cold weather outreach ever since we started. When we noticed that members of the community experiencing homelessness, mental illness, just kind of falling between the cracks, when the city snowed in, a lot of the services went away, but they still exist.
Right.
And as a firefighter, we don't drive by a problem, right? And so me and Matt Young, this is 4 or 5 years ago, I was like, hey, we need to do some cold weather outreach. And Ashley Clayton and Donna, our case managers, they don't have the 24-hour ability,
Sure.
but they did train us on how to approach people, how to talk to people. I'm realizing that sometimes a uniform is intimidating to people. Like as a firefighter, when you show up, people are like, "Thank God you're here."
Yes.
But people don't always feel that way with a uniform, especially if they haven't called 911. So just knowing that whatever traumas they've experienced, that how to approach people and go, "Hey, I'm worried about you." And we decided, hey, we're either going to give people rides to shelters or we're going to leave them with hot calories. That's what we came up with. This was years ago.
Wow.
In a Suburban, an old hand-me-down Suburban, right when we first started. And that's how it kind of grew. The ice storm at the end of 2022, we had people that have insurance, have cars, would fall and break their arm and have no way to get to the hospital. So we had citywide, I'm sure region-wide, dozens, tens, maybe hundreds of people that were all not medic response, just run-of-the-mill broken arms, but the ambulance delays were 4 or 5 hours.
Wow.
Right, because the entire system was snowed in.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And ladder trucks, rescue trucks, engines were sitting with these people. And then some people kind of come, because we're chained up. The fire department is designed to be here 24/7, 365, period. We're never not here.
Wow.
This was the Health One and was supposed to alleviate non-emergency runs to operations. So keeping those rigs in service for life-saving, for CPR, for putting out fires. And so we just decided to start picking people up. And I remember me and one of my buddies, I think we had maybe 4 or 5 people in the back of the ambulance, just getting them to a hospital, all stable enough to go to the waiting room. And the creative problem solving. And I was just thinking, I remember the second day going, man, if I just could have a bus, I could just take these people from the difficult to reach areas to the bus, and the bus could eventually drive them to hospital. And then he looked at me and he's like, well, what about the MAB? And I was like, oh, we have a bus. Like it suddenly clicked that we have a bus.
Yes.
And so from that point forward, I just in the back of my head, I would plant the seed out there. I'd go, okay, so it's super easy to decon. A lot of the clients that we service, people suffering from substance abuse disorder, mental illness, homelessness, they're not always clean, right? And so having something that we can decon, so the next group of people, like, would I bring my family in this bus? And
Exactly.
yes, every time we cleaned it, because it was made that way.
Wow.
So it was like a value add. It's like, and then the incentives. I remember a friend of mine, another firefighter, Benish, he worked 2 of the days, and I'll have to say Rodrigo Cruz and Jeremy Elmore, they worked 3 days in a row on the MAB. I did partial days. I worked a shift and then a partial day.
Yeah.
I put in some hours, but my hat is off to those 2 especially.
Sure.
We would not have been able to help as many people as we did. Those 2 are also Health One members because it takes a special training. The same person that puts out the fire in your house maybe isn't the best person to talk to someone experiencing mental illness
Right.
without training and experience. And so that's the beautiful thing about Health One. And again, the case managers have taught us over the years, have made us all better firefighters, because it's not that they teach you compassion. You just start learning that homelessness, mental illness, chronically being unhoused, they're not easy fixes. It's not like, oh, hey, you should do this, you should do that. And so when you approach people from that point of view, you can actually help them. My heart breaks when I see someone outside unsheltered. The MAB was not here to solve homelessness. It was to stop people from becoming sick to where they would call 911. And I know we helped, I want to say over 200 people. I know we transported well over 100. I think we're the only vehicle doing wheelchair transports. And so chronically homeless with no legs in a wheelchair, we have to get you. And my heart kind of broke because I was talking to some people who wanted maybe a case manager would have been a much better person to talk to, a social worker. We're making sure none of these people are sick.
Right.
Like, if you need to go to the hospital, we want to meet people where they're at.
Yeah.
I know that's a phrase. I will physically go meet you where you're at, and I will take a social worker with me. Safety concerns, we can address those.
Right.
back when there was encampments, Health One would move the people like, oh, you can't go without the police. Well, people in encampments really don't feel comfortable around police. We would go there and say, hey, can you meet us over at this coffee shop? And the person would come meet us. We don't need the police, right?
Yes.
I can meet you there. I'll buy you a hot cup of soup or something.
Sure.
And I tell you, people really trust firefighters.
Yeah.
Mentally ill, homeless, they know that we're going to show up. And we might be gruff. We might, when we do CPR, we clear an area. It's not always pretty, but they know like it's all coming from a very, very good place. Mm-hmm. And so we kind of leverage that with the social workers. It's like, oh, you trust me? Well, will you talk to my friend here? And that's one of the beautiful things. And I missed that during this cold weather outreach. When Chief Scoggins came up with Health One, he basically said, go forth and do good, which is a lot of trust for me and Matt Young. Like he was a brand new firefighter at the time. I'm this, grumpy old guy, from downtown, worked 22 years downtown or whatever, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But we just went to, like I said, we grow where the sunlight is. It's not sunlight though, it's the opposite, right?
Sure.
We go to where the need is and then we see what we can do. It's an odd role for a firefighter because if you have a broken leg, I get you to the hospital, they fix your leg. I can go on the computer and go, oh, they fixed that guy's leg. Then, tea and metals the next day, right? Hey, the house is on fire. Take a line up to the second floor. We do. The fire's out. High five in the front yard, right? Health One, 5 months, no movement with this person, right? This person is suffering. They just keep working the problem. The systems that are set up for people are set up for functional people. And if you have dysfunction in your life, there's barriers. We can kind of blow past them sometimes or just help connect people. And so I honestly feel like we're making the system a little bit better incrementally. It can be depressing. We do suffer a lot of defeats. Some of our patients and clients have died days away from what looked like help to us. And so you got to manage expectations. It's really hard for firefighters who are used to that closure. Like firefighters get addicted to when I show up and you're like, oh, thank God you're here. Like in the back of my head, I'm like, oh yeah, thank God I'm here. That's right.
Yes.
And we tend to ride that, I think, too much. And then you get dealt this population and you're like, oh dear, I care about this person. Now, I've heard their story, whatever the horrible way that, their childhood or whatever, right? You're like, okay, I've made this connection. And then you go, hey, we'd like to get them there. Oh, they can't get this or they're not allowed this. And that barrier hits you too, right? And so,
if you care, like you do.
And I think the social workers are trained, like just in school and everything, that this is the nature of the work. The firefighters aren't always used to that. And so I know on the MAB, getting back to the MAB, the cold weather outreach, we're just loading people up, but everyone's got a story, and they were all so thankful. And the fact that we had one gentleman who refused, in a wheelchair, refused multiple 911 engines and aid cars that stopped by. And when we stopped by, because we could transport him with his friends, right? He acquiesced, right? Because we have this thing that like the AMR goes, usually it can only take you to the hospital. That's our rule. If you're on a stretcher, I can't bring someone with a stretcher to a shelter and take them off a stretcher. Like the optics are horrible, right? But Health One has always been about alternative transport. We can take you to the hospital. We can take you to a clinic. We can take you back to your nursing home. We can put you in an Uber. We can put you in a cab. We got the MAB now. You know what I mean? Like we're working on getting a van for wheelchair transport just because I'm sick and tired of waiting, relying on private companies that are great most of the time, but they're not operating on Christmas. Well, I have a person in a wheelchair on Christmas, right? So almost all of them eventually would have been a 911 call. And so we just front ran it. Yeah. And our job is to keep that engine in service, right? To keep that ladder truck in service, to keep that medic rig, all those things. The two mandates are you're here to take the runs off ops, and then every once in a while you just do the right thing. Like there's a person that needs just this little help, and then we can help him. And I remember we got a guy needed, he changed his ticket to go back to Spokane. He's an alcoholic. His brother's in Spokane. He had a treatment center in Spokane. And he's like, I missed my thing, and they changed the ticket. And I was like, oh, well, we're sitting there trying to figure out right outside the Greyhound station. I remember looking down. I was like, well, I finally got my phone. It was like $18. And his brother's waiting for him. So like we got a landing zone for him. Right? And I was like, in the pocket I went, I was like, oh, this is an easy fix, right?
Yeah.
Like the system wasn't going to fix, but that is an easy fix. And so
that's so touching.
But even sending people home, like will never send someone. I was just telling David this. I will never send someone to another city unless there's someone there to receive them. They've got a structure there because Seattle gets a lot of people sent here for whatever reason by whoever with no landing zone. And the fire department usually is the first people engaged. I'm not going to get into politics other than that I will refuse to do that to anyone else.
Sure. I know during this past weekend, you helped hundreds of people. What was that like?
We had hundreds of mini emergencies throughout the city that were occupying engines and trucks for hours. And your gut is like, what if there's a big fire? What if there's an apartment building fire? And everybody's stuck with these people. We can't abandon them. And I know some engine captains or truck captains are that creative and Like, get in, we're going to drive this little lady with a broken arm to Northwest Hospital, right? In our fire engine, right? Which is great, but the hospital has a procedure for intaking people that doesn't involve you just driving up in a fire engine and dropping them off. And so that's where the MAB, we can do those types of things, right? That's where the idea, the genesis came. So
I'm so glad.
I am too. It was nice, like people that refused, we give them a hot cup of cocoa, hot coffee, broth, whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then we always promised, hey, I'm going to come back and see you. And we'd like note down, get his name. I sometimes give out cigarettes because it's a way to get them talking. It's like, oh, I'll bring you another cigarette in a little bit because this person is like not dressed for the weather. And all of a sudden you come back and you've got like this relationship started. And they're like, okay, I'll go with you. And you're like, hey, I even told them, like, if you don't like the shelter, we'll bring you back here. Right? Like you make these deals. I made these deals on Health One.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you don't want to go. I'm just showing you the option and I'll bring you back here because we're coming back right out here to pick up other people. And it's this
really
weird
cool.
little thing that an ambulance can't do. A medic unit's not going to do. It's not their job, right?
Yeah.
The medics need to be there for, an engine company can't promise to come back, but we can. And I think that's one thing the case managers taught was like, it's about relationships, even mini relationships. And I always feel like if I had the mayor and council or just any Joe citizen with me, and goes for all Health One, I want them to be proud of the work I'm doing. I think the work stands for itself.
Yeah.
And the type of people that are throwing themselves in this work, all our new firefighters, all our new case managers, are just fantastic. And it's rare to see someone who's willing to work as hard as some of these new guys did this weekend that also have compassion. There's enough people in need in this city that when we can start taking it easy, that'll be victory.
So inspiring. I want to ask each of you why you do what you do. Because I got to tell you, you guys are my heroes. You walk in, I'm like, those are my heroes. I look up to those people. I'm thankful for those people.
It's funny. I've reflected on this. This actually ties into cold weather outreach. I was in the Marine Corps, in the infantry. I've been very, very, very cold outside for days. And so when I see other people cold, it's like when you walk to your car, you're cold. Like when the mayor maybe goes grocery shopping, it's cold. But it's like, no, you're not. Well, you're not cold yet, right? You're not cold till you're out here for days. And in the Marine Corps, you're not allowed to build a fire to warm yourself. So when we started doing the cold weather outreach, that's what clicked in my head. I go back. I was a Boy Scout. I joined the Marine Corps. My wife one day pointed out, like, you have always put others first. But, it hit me because I didn't think about it that way. But yeah, I remember she got a job at Alaska Airlines at a call center in Arizona where I was a firefighter because I wanted to work in Seattle.
Oh,
So I could fly up and test, right?
wow.
And sure enough, my daughter was born 2 days later. I'm up here, right? And I just left her for 5 months, which as a young man, I didn't think it was that big a deal, but it was a huge deal.
Huge.
And then I worked downtown. I got my lieutenant was an old downtown guy, and he knew my personality. He goes, oh, they need you, And so I went down to Pioneer Square Station 10, which, is just a meat grinder as far as runs. And just the clients that you serve, the patients that you serve are very, very difficult, homeless, mental illness, drug.
Yeah.
I just dove into it. And so for 20 years, I was down there. And I thought, Chief Scoggins came in talking about Health One. I was like, oh, I've been exposed to this. And I thought I could fix it. I thought, I was very naive. I thought, it was going to be a simple fix.
Yeah.
And then when I realized it wasn't, that's when I've rededicated myself to this, is I would like to make the fire department good at this. Just good at it. And we're already great. People trust us. But
Sure.
there's a ton of room where some very small changes, like a compass, right? You
Yeah.
change 1 degree, but a mile down the road, we've changed the course, right? And it
Right.
just made us very efficient. We started EMS in the 60s. We started the medic program.
Yeah.
And now, the health work, I'm not saying firefighters are social workers, but a lot of the people engaging 911 need not the ER, and they need not to have a fire put out. And so that is where we're going right now societally. And so I just think the fire department should be good at it,
Amen.
the best
Yeah.
at it.
That's beautiful.
That's my motivation.
I
yeah.
think it's a great motivation. What about you, David?
Well, I'm not a firefighter. I'm
Oh,
a
you're
public
not-
information officer.
Okay, sorry about that.
No, it's all good.
Yeah, why do you do what you do?
It's funny. I worked in the corporate world for the majority of my career, and in 2019, I joined the Seattle Fire Department. And for me, it was finding a sense of purpose, where I feel fulfilled when I help other people, especially in dire situations when they're really in need.
Yeah.
So when Roger and other firefighters respond to a significant incident of a homes burning or an apartment building where multiple people are displaced, no one's immediately thinking at that time, how can I help the people that are not going to be able to return to their homes? Because at that early stage, we just don't know if we're able to save the building. So we had a large significant fire about a year and a half ago in the First Hill, and it displaced everyone in the entire building. There's 30 plus units in that apartment building. And my role there is to help with incident command, the people in charge, to see where are the gaps that are not being addressed. And at that moment, they asked me, can you start gathering the people who are displaced and gather their information so that we can inform Red Cross, inform our Emergency Operations Center to get a temporary shelter in place so that we can help these people? Because unfortunately, we've come to the point where we're not going to be able to save this building. And I have to break the news. And this particular building was for people who are vulnerable adults, whether they live with behavioral health illness or are unable to properly take care of themselves. And so I stepped in, asked for additional hands to help me gather everybody, collect their contact information, get the contact information for the social workers that are assigned to them, and make sure that we have an order of place, that the city has a proper response to transport them to a temporary shelter, and then have Red Cross and other agencies help them find permanent housing after this fire. And to say that brings a sense of purpose. It also brings a sense of pride that I'm able to actually do something while I'm not a firefighter. I feel like I can help.
It's huge. Thank you both for doing what you do. Roger and David, God bless you guys. Seriously, I'm so thankful. All of us are.
Thank you.
Thank you.